Welcome to the Forgotten Narrator. There are cities that never sleep, and then there are cities that never see the sun. Necromunda's underhives are not merely places, they are entire worlds unto themselves. Forged in shadow and rust, buried beneath layers of industrial decay and cultural amnesia. Imagine being born in a place where the concept of sky is as abstract as eternity, where the ceiling above your head is made of corroded steel and the air tastes like chemical fire. This is not science fiction, this is daily life for countless billions. A child of the underhive may hear rumors of a surface, of stars, of wind that does not choke. But to them, these are no more real than fairy tales. The only light they know is the flicker of failing lumen strips, the glow of molten slag, or the flash of las fire in the dark. What kind of civilization thrives in such a place? What kind of people emerge from generations of blindness to the natural world? The underhive is not merely a product of imperial negligence. It is the ultimate expression of what happens when humanity consumes itself, layer by layer, forgetting the surface not through oppression alone, but through the inertia of endless survival. These sunless cities are temples to entropy, cathedrals of forgotten labor, and cradles for some of the most resilient, brutal, and strange beings in the galaxy. And once you descend, there is no going back. The surface does not welcome the fallen. Necromunda was not always a world of unbroken steel and shadow. Once it bore another name, Arrhenius Prime. In the distant mists of pre-imperial history, it was a jewel of humanity's expansion, a hub of industry and interstellar commerce. But the Age of Strife shattered that illusion, and when the Great Crusade came, the world was forcefully folded into the Imperium. With that annexation came purpose, grinding, singular, and merciless. Necromunda would be made into a foundry world, a production engine to churn out munitions, materials, and men for an empire at war with itself and all that lay beyond. What began as purpose swiftly became pathology. No one stopped building, they simply couldn't. The Imperium's hunger has no off switch. Production quotas rose as resources dwindled. Vast manufactoria consumed entire continents. The upper hives reached the mesosphere, towering stacks of Gothic steel and exhaust pipes vomiting waste and flame into the void. But it's what happened beneath these cathedrals of industry that shaped Necromunda's true soul. Every time a layer was built up, something was buried below. Old housing units, collapsed factories, obsolete tech shrines, they weren't cleared away. They were entombed, forgotten, left to decay in the dark. Over centuries, the layers became too thick to manage, too dangerous to explore, too expensive to purge, so they were sealed. The Imperium moved on, ever upward. The ruling houses built their spires and claimed dominion over the skyline, while the unwanted, the poor, the criminal, the mutated were either pushed downward or born into it. What had been a temporary scaffolding became permanent strata. And in that sediment of civilization, new worlds took root. The underhive is not a slum, it is a fossil, still alive and growing. Entire societies have formed where once only pipes and sewage ran. Markets thrive beneath vaults that once held noble halls. Cathedrals are now gang fortresses. Holy relics are melted down for scrap. And still the collapse continues. Each generation adds more weight, more heat, more pressure. And the only direction left to expand is down. The higher echelons do not care. Their needs are met, their skies simulated, their wealth secured by walls and void shields. The middle strata, the so-called hive cities, do not look below. They are too busy surviving the bureaucracy, the gangs, the toxic rain. But the underhive remembers. Its people whisper of a time when light was free. Their ancestors may have walked under suns. Now they walk under dust and poison. It's not just physical descent, it's spiritual. The collapse of purpose into perpetual decay is not an accident. It is the very logic of the Imperium. Function divorced from reason, production divorced from need. On Necromunda, hives are built because that is what is done. Factories run because they must. No one knows where the goods go or who uses them, or even what they are sometimes. It doesn't matter. The machine demands sacrifice and the underhive bleeds. And in that slow bleed, in that erosion of meaning, the people of the underhive are forged. Not by choice, not by birthright, but by consequence. They are not merely survivors. They are the inheritors of a world that has lost all memory of its beginning and has no vision of its end. The underhive isn't built, it's layered. Not by design, but by neglect, by centuries of build-up, by the sedimentation of history itself. It is the physical embodiment of entropy given shape, a city stacked upon its own ruins, endlessly folding in on itself. Each layer is a scar, a wound time has chosen not to heal. Factories collapse, are buried and forgotten, only for another to rise atop the bones of the old. Noble manors once decorated with stained glass now serve as the ceilings of markets below. Sewer tunnels become transit roads. Ash-choked roads turn into gang corridors. Vaults built to safeguard ancient secrets now echo with the footsteps of the desperate and the deranged. This vertical decay forms a kind of geological strata of humanity's sins. You can read Necromunda's history not through archives or scripture, but through its layers. High above, the spires glisten with false light and artifice. Descend a little, and the mid-hives groan under bureaucracy and fear. Go deeper still, and you reach the Under-Hive, a place so compacted by history that time itself seems irrelevant. There are layers no one has mapped, zones so deep that language changes, where even the air is a relic of older eras. Entire dialects evolve in isolation. The forgotten corners speak in Creole tech prayers, mixing binaric code fragments with ancient High Gothic. And there's a grim poetry to it, how death and waste form the seedbed for new life. In the Under-Hive, decay is not an ending, it's a beginning. When a manufactorum collapses, it creates shelter. When a reactor leaks, mutants form families in the warmth. When a spire burns and crashes down, it feeds a dozen new communities below. The remains of war are scavenged, sorted, sold. Scrap is culture, rust is inheritance. A broken cogitator may become the altar of a cult. A crushed power armor gauntlet might adorn a gang lord's throne. Here, even junk dreams. These sedimented cities live a parallel evolution. They do not progress in a linear fashion. They adapt, like deep-sea creatures around volcanic vents. There is innovation, but it is rarely technological. It is cultural, tactical, brutal. A gang learns to survive not through strategy manuals, but by watching how the mold grows on power conduits, by listening to the hum of generators 3 levels up. Old tech becomes sacred. Ancient generators are worshipped. Water recyclers are guarded like relics. Every working servo skull is a potential god. Above them, the higher strata forget. The spires do not look down. Officially, many of these layers do not exist. Entire sectors are labeled cleansed, sealed, or quarantined. Yet life persists. People are born, live, and die in chambers no cartographer has acknowledged in 10 millennia. The administratum can't track it all. No one can. And perhaps deep down, the Imperium prefers it that way. The Under-Hive functions as a pressure valve, absorbing the madness, the mutation, the chaos, so that the upper levels can continue their delusions of order. The beauty of this vertical dystopia lies in its resilience. In a world that forgets, the Under-Hive remembers in rust and grime. It is not an architectural marvel, but a memorial of failure. And yet within that failure, there is strange vitality. A twisted sort of hope. Not the hope of escape or redemption, but the hope of endurance, of continuity, of grit. Cities without sky or surface become petri dishes for the future. Whether the Imperium likes it or not, decay rules the Under-Hive, but it is not inert. It breathes, it festers, it grows. In Necromunda's depths, rust becomes a predator and mold becomes sovereign. Where other environments would see death, the Under-Hive nurtures transformation. It is a living, festering ecosystem shaped by centuries of unchecked industry and biological entropy. Beneath the metal and stone, strange things evolve, not despite the toxic slurry of chemical runoff, radiation, and decay, but because of it. Entire fungal forests bloom in coolant-choked tunnels. Bioluminescent molds line the edges of habravines. Sludge rivers teem with mutated fish that glow in sickly hues and feed on battery acid and ash. These organisms are not mere curiosities. They are foundational to the Under-Hive's way of life. Some clans harvest mold spores to create narcotics. Others refine sump fungus into food, bitter, spongy, and barely nutritious, but capable of sustaining life when all else fails. Certain gang chemists trade in volatile brews fermented from rot gas emissions and enzyme sludge. Even the infamous spire rats, cloaked in filth and myth, rely on scavenged fungal colonies to survive the endless dark. Over time, these life forms don't just adapt to decay, they weaponize it. Some fungi release spores that corrode plasteel. Others infect bionics, growing tendrils into circuitry and shorting out ancient systems. Then there's rust, the true monarch of Necromunda. It eats everything. No surface is untouched, no relic immune. Rust is not decay, it is evolution. A bolt gun left untouched for a month is eaten down to its spirit. Whole manufactoria collapse under rust-weighted girders. There are rumors, persistent and whispered, of rust wraiths, entities born of machine spirits driven mad by corrosion, drifting through tunnels in search of vengeance. Whether real or imagined, their legend reveals a truth. Rust is not merely a substance, it is a cultural fear, a theology of loss. The Underhive's reliance on these processes creates a kind of symbiosis with decay. Gangs don't merely avoid rust or mold, they study it, use it. A rusted pipeline might indicate a weak wall. Mold patterns may show where warmth leaks through stone. Some scavvers can read the flow of fungal growth to navigate collapsing sectors. This is a world where the natural sciences have regressed into mysticism. Ecology has become folklore. A blind priest may bless a sump beast with sanctified grease, believing it to be the incarnation of a fungal god. There is no separation between biology and theology here, only survival and interpretation. Stranger still are the things that do not belong. Machine spirits gone rogue. Broken servitors still fulfilling ancient routines, unaware that their tasks have no meaning. Entire rooms where the walls seem to breathe, exhaling a sweet, deadly mist. These anomalies are not random, they are symptoms of an ecosystem in revolt. The line between the mechanical and the organic is blurred. Cogitator banks grow vines of copper wire and spore-puffing nodes. Data slates mutate new ports. No one builds these things. They emerge, born of entropy, faith, and time. Above ground, the Adeptus Mechanicus might classify, study, or destroy such growths. But in the Underhive, there are no tech priests with clean robes. Only rust shamans and sump witches, interpreting the will of the decayed. Some say the planet itself has a kind of memory, and that these fungal networks are its nervous system. Others say it is the rot god, the forgotten twin of the Omnissiah, whispering through mildew and corrosion. Whatever the truth, one fact remains unassailable. Nothing stays clean down here. Purity is a myth. Decay is law. And from decay, all things grow. In the Underhive, power does not flow from thrones or titles. It seeps from barrels of promethium, from crates of ammo, from whispered alliances traded in the dark. The great houses of Necromunda may rule the spires and dictate the trade of the upper hives, but down here, beneath their notice, another economy rules, older, bloodier, and far more honest. The guilds and the gangs are not just the lungs and veins of the Underhive, they are its brutal, beating heart. Guilders are the lifeblood of commerce, descendants of ancient trade dynasties and sanctioned by the higher hive's bureaucracy. They do not govern by law, they control by necessity. They bring water, food, oxygen, chems, and tools. Without them, the Underhive dies. But they are not generous. Every liter of breathable air, every purified drop of water comes at a price. Guilders do not care who rules the territories, only that their trade routes remain unmolested. They hire enforcers, bribe gangs, forge temporary alliances, and break them just as quickly. In a place with no formal justice, they are the arbiters of necessity. And their caravans are as much fortresses as they are supply chains, heavily guarded, fortified, and often escorted by servo-hounds or lobotomized servitors with heavy bolters grafted into their arms. Then there are the gangs, the true kings and queens of the corridors. Orlocks, Goliaths, Escher, Van Saar, Delak, and more, each with their own twisted cultures, philosophies, and aesthetics. They are not just criminal factions. They are micronations with banners, territories, traditions, and grudges that go back centuries. The Goliaths, grotesque and muscle-bound, embody the brutality of industry. The Escher, matriarchal and chemically attuned, are both assassins and alchemists. The Van Saar, with their radiation-bleeding suits, are cursed tech scholars, constantly at risk of melting from within. Each gang is a reflection of the hive's madness, a distilled expression of survival as ideology. Territory is everything. Holding a hablock, a water still, or a recycler means life. Losing it means death. Borders are fluid. Treaties are jokes. Every day, turf changes hands in ambushes, sabotage, and full-scale war. But these wars are not just for survival. They are ritual, identity, blood oaths reenacted through violence. Gangs pass down tactics like hymns, stories of ancestral victories etched into walls with las burns, and some take it further. elevating their leaders to demigod status, painting murals in blood, singing hymns made from the screech of bullet ricochets. And still, beneath even this chaos lie layers of commerce and collaboration. Gangs might feud in one dome, only to trade in another. Chems cooked in one sector fund arms deals in another. Guilders sometimes use one gang to suppress another, only to flip the table a week later. And lurking always are the criminal cartels, the smuggling networks, the narco-cults that thrive in shadow and corruption. They are the spine of the Under-Hive's real economy. Drugs, weapons, relics, slaves, and scrap tech. All traded with cold efficiency, all soaked in blood. There's a kind of honor here, but it is not one of mercy or fairness. It is the honor of knowing the game and playing it well. Of knowing when to shoot and when to trade. And while the upper hives drown in meaningless bureaucracy, the Under-Hive's brutal barter system keeps billions alive. In this inverted world where decay is eternal and daylight is a rumor, it is the gangs and the guilds who keep the gears turning. Not for hope, not for the Emperor, but because if they didn't, everything would stop. And in Necromunda, stasis is death. When the sun is gone and the surface forgotten, the soul seeks light wherever it can, often in places better left untouched. In the Under-Hive, where faith is not taught but scavenged, religion becomes something feral. It mutates, it adapts. Here the great creeds of the ecclesiarchy echo faintly, half-remembered through generations of darkness, misquoted prayers carved into bulkheads, litanies of fire and redemption mixed with sump legends and gang myths. What remains is not faith as the Imperium envisions it, but a shattered mirror, reflecting truths too cracked to be comfortable. The imperial cult, nominally dominant even here, often devolves into grotesque pantomimes of worship. Preachers might chant sermons while their flocks fight in blood pits beneath them. Shrines to the emperor are sometimes no more than melted auspex units adorned with teeth and grease, the iconography rusted until unrecognizable. And yet the devotion is real. The people of the Under-Hive do not pray because they expect salvation. They pray because hope is a weapon, a tool, a habit as vital as breath. But beyond the sanctioned creeds rise stranger gods. The cults of the Under-Hive are legion, each born from the dreams and nightmares of a people who have never known the stars. Some worship the machine ghost, a spectral entity said to dwell in old power grids, answering prayers with power surges and electro shrieks. Others kneel before the sump father, a bloated corpse deity said to drift through chemical rivers, granting visions in sleep and madness in waking. There are fire cults that immolate themselves in sacred incinerators, bone cults that believe every fracture draws them closer to divinity, even fungus cults that worship the spread of rot as sacred bloom. Many of these cults begin as survival mechanisms, ways to explain the unexplainable. When a gang is wiped out by a malfunctioning servitor with glowing eyes, it becomes a divine retribution. When a dome collapses and only one child is spared, that child becomes a prophet. Over time, these stories ossify into scripture. What began as trauma becomes tradition. And slowly, whole faiths are born from ash and agony. The Adeptus Ministorum does not always intervene. In truth, it cannot. The Under-Hive is too vast, too decentralized, too wild. Preachers who descend often vanish. Sometimes they are converted, other times they are devoured, and in some cases they become the very heresies they were sent to quell. There is a cruel irony in this. The Emperor's light, when shone through miles of pollution and decay, warps into something monstrous. And then there are the cults, not just heretical, but profane. Chaos festers here, as it always does where hope curdles. The cult of the rusted coil, the ash-tongued prophets, the children of the hollow sun, each a cancerous echo of the warp's hunger. They hide in plain sight, cloaked in the madness of the Under-Hive, whispering to those who have nothing left to lose. And they are rarely alone. There are whispers of demons bound to forgotten STCs, of warp entities riding chemical vapors, of things that are neither machine nor soul but hunger made manifest. And the people, desperate for meaning, invite them in. It would be easy to condemn them. Easy to call them fools, heretics, monsters. But to live a life where the surface is myth, where the stars are lies, and where your God has never once looked down, what else is left but faith in something, anything, that answers? In the Under-Hive, even madness is a kind of prayer. And sometimes, the darkness answers back. Some things in the Under-Hive were never meant to survive. Others should never have been born at all. In the suffocating dark of Necromunda's buried worlds, life mutates, festers, and forgets what it once was. Generations cut off from the surface, bathed in radiation, poisoned by toxins, and warped by forbidden technologies, give rise to a grotesque gallery of near-humans and post-humans, mutants, scavies, and creatures for whom even the term abomination seems too kind. To be a mutant in the Imperium is to be cursed, socially, genetically, and spiritually. The ecclesiarchy teaches that mutation is a stain of the warp, a sign of impurity, deserving only death. But in the Underhive, mutants are not rare. They are the inevitable. The environment demands it. Children born with extra limbs, chitinous skin, night vision, or no eyes at all are not marvels or monsters. They are facts of life. Some are culled, yes, especially in the upper levels where fear of heresy still burns brightest. But most slink into the deeper layers, swallowed by communities that no longer see the difference between man and mutant. In the pitch-black corridors of the Sump Warrens, it's not about purity, it's about functionality. The scavies are another breed entirely. The name suggests nothing of their horror. More degenerated than mutated, scavies are those who have fallen too far. Many are the inbred remnants of old hives, communities so isolated that civilization itself rotted. Others are plague bearers, diseased beyond saving, their flesh sloughing even as they breathe. They wear tatters of clothing, mock armor made from refuse and bone, and speak in garbled dialects thick with superstition. To the surface, they are walking contagions. To the Underhive, they are nightmares. Yet even scavies form societies of a sort. Crude hierarchies ruled by brute strength or half-sentient psychic prowess, driven by hunger, fear, and warped interpretations of long-dead religions. There are deeper horrors still. The Dome Ferals, children raised by malfunctioning servitors or sump beasts. The Slagkin, whose blood boils under ultraviolet light. The Wire-touched, who cannot stop twitching, speaking in bursts of static and scrap code. The Slitherborn, who breathe sulfur and worship their own shed skin. These are not just mutations, they are evolutions of a kind, sculpted not by natural selection, but by chemical disaster, psychic leakage, and technological neglect. No geneticist would call them stable. But in the Underhive, stability is a myth. Survival is the only real metric. Then there are the rumors. Whole subcultures speak of the forgotten, the unborn, the blind choir, of creatures that stalk only the deepest ash canyons, whose faces are mirrors, whose voices sing in binary, whose touch causes metal to rust and flesh to crystallize. No picked capture has ever confirmed their existence, but those who go looking tend not to return. Some claim they are echoes of ancient bioexperiments from before the age of apostasy. Others say they are failed attempts to clone the Emperor's gene seed. In a place where truth is eroded by time, everything becomes myth. And myths have power. The tragedy is not in their form, it's in their story. These beings are not monsters because they chose it. They are what happens when humanity is left to rot in its own shadow. They are what the Imperium denies, what the ecclesiarchy forbids, what the administratum cannot classify. They are the illegible footnotes of the human condition, scratched into walls with bloody fingers and told through broken teeth. And yet in the Underhive, they live. They barter. They mourn. They dream. Some even love. To the surface world, they are a threat to be cleansed. To the Underhive, they are neighbors, enemies, sometimes even saints. Because when the sky is gone and the air is poison, the only thing that matters is whether you can carry a gun, hold a wall, or share a meal. In the dark, nobody asks what you are, only what you can do. There are places in the Underhive where even the bravest gangers fear to tread, zones where the air grows thick with chemical fumes, where the only sound is the drip of toxic sludge onto corroded steel, and where the very walls seem to watch. These are the ash gates and sump depths, the thresholds into realms more ancient, more alien, and far more dangerous than even the Underhive itself. If the hive cities are monuments to decay, then the sump is its primordial ooze, a vast unknowable sea of filth and forgotten history, choked with the refuse of 10,000 years. The ash gates are not doors in the traditional sense. They are massive ventilation choke points, abandoned lift hubs, or blast-sealed corridors once used to dump industrial waste into the lower levels. Over time, these pathways have become mythologized. They are thresholds, not merely between zones, but between realities. Crossing an ash gate means leaving behind whatever semblance of law, territory, or civilization the Underhive clings to. Beyond them lies the deep sump, a vast and largely unexplored region of collapsed domes, flooded tunnels, and ancient reactors still thrumming with power no one understands. Few return from the sump. Those who do speak in hushed tones of endless black seas, of creatures that move beneath the chemical surface, of fungal towers the size of hab blocks that breathe like lungs. The sump is not just a location, it is an ecosystem unto itself. Entire species of sump beasts, eyeless and bioluminescent, prowl the oily depths. Some resemble bloated leeches the size of transports. Others move like serpents of slag and bone, trailing clouds of corrosive mist. There are legends of hive krakens, massive semi-mechanical monstrosities with tentacles of rusted cable, drawn by the thrum of old reactors and the scent of spilled blood. And still, people live here. Mad, hermit-like scavengers build floating shanties atop rust islands. Forgotten enclaves speak dialects no linguist could decipher, claiming descent from hive fleets long since erased from record. Some even claim to have seen cities beneath the sump. Entire submerged districts, still lit, still humming with power, sealed by mechanisms that no living tech priest could replicate. Are these visions true, or the hallucinations of gas-maddened survivors? In the Underhive, the line between truth and madness is thinner than rust. The ash gates themselves are often guarded, sometimes by automated defense systems long since turned rogue, other times by ancient servitors whose task it is to prevent access into the depths. But more often, they are left alone, not from mercy, but from fear. To open an ash gate is to tempt something older and hungrier than the hive itself. Some say they lead to the original foundations of Necromunda, to proto-hives lost beneath the collapse of civilization. Others believe they open into zones touched by the warp, places where reality itself breaks down and reformats into screaming geometry. There are treasure hunters, of course. Always. Desperate gangs seeking Archotech, guild-sanctioned expeditions looking for lost power cores, rogue psychers following dreams burned into their skulls. They call themselves explorers, but the hive calls them fodder. Most vanish. Some return changed, eyes bleeding, voices speaking in binary tongues unable to endure light. One such scaver carved a map of the sump into his own skin before collapsing, twitching, at a drinking hole in Dust Town. The map was taken. The man was burned. No one speaks of it now, and yet the pull remains. The sump is more than death, it is revelation. To those who go deep enough, who survive long enough, the Underhive reveals truths that no surface dweller could withstand. This is not the end of the hive, it is its beginning, its marrow, its dreaming core. And it dreams in rust, in ooze, in the silent hum of lost machines. Some beneath Necromunda dream of treasure, others seek redemption, secrets, or simply escape. But the Archotech hunters, the relic chasers and tech prospectors, pursue something even more dangerous, the forgotten power of ancient times. Scattered throughout the deepest hive layers are sites that defy the rust and ruin around them. Vaults that glow with untouched circuitry, machines still humming after millennia, doors that refuse to open, locked by codes and languages no one remembers. These are the industrial ghosts and Archotech tombs, remnants of a golden age long turned to ash. The Imperium does not innovate, it replicates. It survives on fragments of knowledge preserved through rote and ritual. But beneath the hive, buried in the oldest strata, lie machines from before the fall, before the age of strife, perhaps even before the Imperium itself. These are not just relics, they are anomalies. STC fragments still capable of building self-replicating drones. Holographic archives untouched by time. Voxcasters that scream in voices no one recognizes. Entire facilities powered by systems not even the Adeptus Mechanicus can identify. These places do not advertise themselves. Most are stumbled upon by accident, revealed when a dome collapses or a sump tremor cracks open a wall. But word travels fast in the Underhive. Once a location is known, it becomes a war zone. Gangs mobilize, guilders send teams, cults stake claims and begin rites of activation. Sometimes even surface forces intervene, dispatching tech adepts or Skitarii kill teams to secure what might be a priceless find, or a heretical abomination. These clashes are brutal, desperate, and almost always futile. For the tombs do not give up their secrets easily. Many are guarded, sometimes by automated defenses that still follow protocols from a dead civilization. turrets with arcane ammo types, combat servitors fused into the walls, psywards that melt the minds of intruders. Others are protected by mechanisms even stranger. One vault requires a voice print from a man who died 9,000 years ago. Another is sealed with a gene code no human should possess. And some sites seem cursed. Anyone who enters vanishes, and the vault reseals itself untouched by time. No gang is foolish enough to return a second time. And yet, people keep trying. The lure of Archotech is too great. A single working relic can buy a spire's worth of power. A functioning data slab can rewrite a house's fortune. There are legends of gangers who uncovered energy weapons that never run dry, of chemists who extracted immortality from ancient stasis pods. One tale speaks of a Vansar enclave that uncovered a thinking engine, sentient, vast, and angry. It offered knowledge. They accepted. None survived. But their descendants are said to glow in the dark, blessed or cursed by the engine's final gift. Some tech adepts whisper that these tombs are not random. They are testing sites, remnants of a forgotten war or a failed experiment. Others believe they are warnings, that the hive was built atop something not meant to be disturbed. A memory, perhaps, or a prison. But most in the Under-Hive don't care. They don't have the luxury of fearing what they don't understand. A relic is a weapon is power, and power is survival. In these depths, every ruined cogwheel, every shattered servo, every rusting console is sacred. Not because it represents progress, but because it proves that something better once existed. And maybe, just maybe, that something can be reclaimed, or destroyed. It doesn't matter. What matters is that in the graveyard of the past, some things still move, some still breathe, and some are still waiting. In the depths where no light reaches, stories become the currency of the soul. In Necromunda's Under-Hive, urban legends are more than tales. They are survival guides, warnings, and whispered truths wrapped in myth. The deeper you go, the more reality frays, and in that fraying, belief takes root. Every gang has its stories, every dome its folklore. These are not bedtime tales. They are cautions born in blood. There's the story of the Screamer vents, grates that howl like children at midnight, said to lead to a shaft where gravity inverts and time forgets itself. Supposedly, if you toss a corpse down, it comes back aged 1,000 years, bones like powdered porcelain. Or the shifting tower in Sector Helix Delta, which appears in different locations on different nights. Gangs who make camp inside vanish, but sometimes their shadows remain, burned into the walls like soot graffiti. The legend of the Gearmonger haunts tech hunters and scrap pickers. He's described as a half-man, half-machine, stitched from scavenged augmetics and cursed data, endlessly assembling something in the dark. What he's building, no one knows. Some say he was once a Vansar prodigy driven mad by forbidden code. Others claim he's a ghost of the Omnissiah, punishing those who disrespect lost technology. His supposed sightings always correlate with power outages, and those who pursue him often return, if at all, missing both limbs and time. Then there's the tale of the drowned choir, an entire habdome submerged by a chemical flood generations ago. But if you walk its edge during certain sump tides, you can hear singing, low, harmonic, and impossibly distant. Some say it's the souls of those who drowned, still praising the Emperor in corrupted hymnals. Others think it's a signal loop from an old Vox network. One scaver claimed to have recorded it. He played the audio once. By morning, he had torn his own ears off. Among the oldest myths is the Silent King of Ventra Hollow, a figure cloaked in tarnished robes and chains, never seen moving, always watching. He sits on a throne made from broken thrones, surrounded by servitor remains and melted cogitators. Gangs that try to steal from his domain report losing all memory of their journey upon return. Others forget their names entirely. Some whisper that he is a psychic null, a blank spot in reality where the warp cannot look. Or worse, that he is its avatar, resting. Perhaps the most chilling legend is that of the mirror flesh. They say there's a corridor deep in the ash scar levels where your reflection begins to move independently. At first it mimics you, then it lags, then it smiles. If it grins, run. If it waves, you're already dead. Entire scav runs have ended with their picked feeds showing only static and a faint sound like grinding glass. The Adeptus Mechanicus refuses to comment. The Ordo Xenos denies jurisdiction, but the tunnel is still there. marked by gang sigils of warning, layered so thick the walls look scabbed with ink. These stories persist not because they are told, but because they are remembered. In a world where history is a privilege and records are a lie, oral lore is gospel. Every ganger who survives an encounter becomes a prophet. Every gang that vanishes becomes legend. And in the Underhive, belief has teeth. The act of telling a tale gives it shape, gives it power, makes it real. So when someone tells you not to walk alone in Sector Null, when a dome priest paints wards above your door made of blood and recycled oil, when a gunner refuses to enter a lift without chanting the name of a long-dead hive queen, listen, they aren't being superstitious. They're trying to live another day. In the Underhive, the myths are not a reflection of reality. They are reality, filtered through fear, oil, and desperation. And sometimes, just sometimes, they knock back. There is a sound that defines the Underhive. It is not the shriek of last fire, nor the hiss of leaking gas. It is silence. The heavy, suffocating kind that wraps around you like a wet shroud. In Necromunda's depths, the deeper you go, the quieter everything becomes. Not for lack of life, but because so much life here has learned not to make a sound. The great silence is not absence. It is caution, trauma, memory. It is the hush of a world that has forgotten how to speak. Imagine living surrounded by millions, yet dying alone in a collapsed corridor. Your body never found, your name never spoken again. In the Underhive, that is not tragedy. It is normal. Communication fails at depth. Vox signals die in static. Messages are carried by hand, if at all. And even when contact is made, it is brief, suspicious, transactional. There is no community in the way surface dwellers understand it. Only temporary alliances. Only the fragile mesh of shared desperation. The architecture encourages this silence. Massive walls with no markings. Corridors that loop back on themselves. Ducts wide enough to swallow entire warbands, their echoes swallowed before they reach the end. Every layer muffles the one above it. Every dome is a tomb waiting for its lid. And the people, oh the people, are shaped by this hush. They speak in gestures, in code, in eye glances. Voices are kept low, not just out of fear, but because raising your voice is a kind of arrogance. A declaration that you matter. In the Underhive, nobody matters. Isolation becomes inheritance. Whole gangs form without ever meeting outsiders. Some enclaves forget their origins entirely, believing themselves to be the last survivors of the galaxy. And when they do meet others, they do not greet. They assess. Is this a threat? A target? A resource? Emotion is a liability. Kindness is dangerous. The most revered are those who feel nothing, who walk in silence, who kill without ceremony. And yet, there's another kind of silence, one more tragic still, the silence of memory. In the Underhive, you forget. You forget your ancestors, your house, your tongue. You forget there was ever a sun. Some people don't even know what sky means. They learn about it the way others learn about gods, through broken stories and impossible dreams. Imagine a child pointing at a lumen strip and asking if that's what stars look like. Imagine an old scaver weeping silently because he remembers blue, but not why it mattered. There's silence in grief too. People do not mourn here with rituals. There is no time, no safety, no priests. A corpse is a resource. Strip the gear, burn the rest, move on. If you pause to cry, you're next. And so, grief becomes internalized. A constant, dull ache that hums like a reactor core behind every eye. Some wear tokens of the dead, bones, teeth, skin tags, not out of sentiment, but as reminders. This is what happens. This is what waits. And still, there are moments of unspoken beauty. A gang pausing in a shattered dome, gazing at an ancient mural lit by accident. A child finding an old audio reel and listening to music for the first time. A hermit planting a fungus garden in a collapsed train station, not for food, but for color. No one speaks in these moments. They wouldn't know how, but they feel, they remember. In that silence, something survives. Perhaps that is the greatest truth of the Underhive. Not the violence, not the corruption, not even the horror, but the silence. The great, aching stillness that wraps every soul like a shroud. It is not emptiness, it is presence. It is the weight of all that has been lost and all that still lingers, unspoken, unwept, unseen. The Underhive is not just a place. It is an idea, a metaphor made manifest. It is what happens when a civilization builds upward while its soul collapses downward. To look at the Underhive is to look at the Imperium without the golden paint, without the chanting choirs, without the lies. It is the raw truth of humanity's legacy: stratified despair, mechanized suffering, and the worship of rot. The Imperium loves hierarchy. From the emperor on his throne to the lowest manufacturer worker, everything must be ordered, categorized, labeled. But the Under-Hive breaks that illusion. It is order drowned in its own byproducts, a living contradiction. The surface speaks of loyalty, faith, duty, but down here those words crumble like rusted steel. No one prays because they believe. They pray because silence is terrifying. No one works out of duty. They work because the alternative is starvation. The Under-Hive is the Empire's reflection in a broken mirror, jagged, distorted, more honest than any cathedral. In every corridor you can see it. Symbols of power turned inward, Aquilas graffitied over with blood, servo skulls now trophies, Vox hymns hijacked into gang slogans. It's not rebellion, it's adaptation. The Hive doesn't rage against the Imperium, it becomes it in miniature through parody and necessity. The gang lords are emperors of their own ruins. The chem priests are saints of solvent. The guilds are the ecclesiarchy's echo, trading salvation for credits and ammunition. Every part of the Imperium structure is replicated here, but twisted, bled dry, and left to fester. This is what makes the Under-Hive so terrifying. It is the logical end of the Imperium's philosophy. A society where life is a resource, where history is disposable, where identity is assigned by violence. In the Hives, people are not born, they are produced. Not taught, they are programmed. And when they die, their deaths do not matter. There is always another. Just like the Forge Worlds, just like the Guard, just like the endless press of humanity in the void. The Under-Hive is not a failure of imperial policy. It is its perfection. This is what the system creates when left unchecked. Layers of suffering so deep they forget what suffering is. And yet, within this horror, there is symbolism of another kind. The Under-Hive endures. It adapts. It grows life from poison. It births cultures, gods, legends. It proves that even in a world designed to grind people into silence, they will still sing, however off-key, however brief. Gangs become tribes. Tribes become nations. Faiths grow in the dark. Stories are passed. Children are born who never know the sky, but dream of it anyway. Even here, in the lowest pit, humanity insists on surviving. The Under-Hive is also a memory palace. Every broken gear, every sealed dome, is a relic of a time before the rot. It remembers the golden age, even as it denies it. That tension between memory and oblivion, between empire and entropy, is what defines it. A place built by machines to serve men, now run by men who are more machine than soul. A tomb that births cities. A hell that sustains a billion lives. This is why the Under-Hive matters. Not because of what it does, but because of what it shows us. That the Imperium in all its glory cannot escape what it is. That its miracles are fueled by slavery. That its saints are born of chemical ash. That its eternity is a lie told by those who fear the dark. The Under-Hive is that dark. It is not beneath the Imperium, it is its foundation. And foundations rot first. Every hive has bones, but the Under-Hive has ghosts. Not the kind that wail in the dark, but those that cling to the skin, to the memory, to the very walls themselves. There is a grief embedded in the Under-Hive so deep, so chronic, that it no longer feels like mourning. It feels like gravity. An ambient sorrow that pulls everything downward, bit by bit, layer by layer, soul by soul. This is not the mourning of a single loss, but of something larger, more abstract, more terrible. The mourning of potential. The most haunting truth about the Under-Hive is not what it is, but what it could have been. Every crumbling wall once held promise. Every broken pipe once carried clean water. Every dome, now flooded with filth or fire, was once new. Freshly sealed, shining with the ambition of an empire that believed in its own righteousness. Somewhere buried under the slag are whole neighborhoods built by people who believed they were helping to forge a better galaxy. Workers who sang hymns while building reactor halls, engineers who signed their names into the foundations, architects who imagined futures. All of them are gone, but their intentions remain like fingerprints in dust, smudged and half erased. And what is the Under-Hive, if not the grave of optimism? The ghosts are not literal, but they are real. A scaver might find a room perfectly preserved, sealed off for millennia, where tables are still set for a meal that never happened. A dome might collapse and reveal a mural, painted lovingly in bright pigments, showing scenes of pre-imperial unity. a vision of Necromunda as it once was, or might have become. These glimpses are rare, but when they come, they hit like a bullet to the heart. They show that this place wasn't always a nightmare, that it was made into one, that the horror was a choice, one made through neglect, greed, doctrine, and inertia. In this context, the gangs and guilds take on new shapes. They are not just factions, they are inheritors. They carry forward a world that forgot itself. Their violence is a reenactment of the world's collapse. Their traditions are fossilized forms of lost culture. Every house has echoes of something purer, something older. House Escher's biochemical mastery may have once been medical science. Orlok's grit and engineering skill, once proud civic labor. Delok's secrecy, perhaps once stewardship. But the ideals were poisoned, warped by survival. The ghosts of what these houses were meant to be now walk beside them, silent and watching. And still deeper, beyond even the sump and the rust-choked machines, there are places so old they cannot be classified. Cathedrals without names, vaults etched in symbols that predate the Imperium. Whole biomes lit by failed suns where the air tastes like memory and sorrow. There are stories, too consistent to be coincidence, of individuals who go deep enough to begin dreaming in another language. Of those who come back unable to speak at all. Some claim these zones hold the psychic residue of a species-wide trauma, a mourning encoded into the very stone. Others believe the Emperor himself passed through here during the Unification Wars, and that his silence remains. In such places, the walls whisper, not in sound, but in feeling. Despair, grief, apology. Some gangs refuse to enter these zones. Others build shrines to the feeling itself, believing it to be the soul of the hive, speaking through rust and time. One gang, long since lost, was said to carry a skull wired into their Vox system that could weep coolant. They called it the Last Child, and claimed it was the final remnant of a hive spirit gone mad from loneliness. This layer of grief transforms how we see the Underhive. It is not just a ruin, it is an unacknowledged memorial. Every piece of decayed tech, every failed system is a headstone, every gurgling sump river a funeral procession. And the living? They are not just survivors, they are mourners. They carry a grief too vast to name, too old to process. So it becomes ritual, violence, worship, forgetting. But some remember, a tech shaman who whispers to broken terminals like lost lovers, a child who draws pictures of trees she has never seen, a scaver who hums an ancient lullaby that no one taught her. These fragments hint at something defiant, that memory can survive entropy, that even in a place built to be forgotten, echoes remain. And perhaps that's what terrifies the Imperium most. Not the heresy, not the mutation, but the memory. The idea that the Underhive still remembers what the Imperium wanted everyone to forget, that things could have been different, that another path was possible, and that every layer of rot is not just a testament to decay, but to abandonment, betrayal, silence. The Underhive is not just a city without sky, it is a city that remembers the sky, and it mourns. There is a story told in the ash-choked corners of Necromunda, one not recorded by scribes, not whispered by priests, but passed from ganger to ganger, in blood and in breath. It's the story of a spire that fell, not to war, not to sabotage, but to gravity, to inevitability. A noble tower, once gleaming with artificial daylight and perfumed air, collapsed upon itself. The records say it was a fault in the supports. But the Underhive tells a different story. It says the hive ate it, not out of malice but hunger, and that story is more true than anything in the Imperial archives, because the Underhive consumes. It consumes history, identity, architecture, culture, time itself. A sector deemed vital one decade becomes forgotten the next. A dome once holy becomes a landfill. People vanish, traditions dissolve, and in their place the hive grows denser, heavier, more haunted. This slow digestion is not decay, it is transformation. The hive does not rot, it changes form. It folds what it cannot burn. It builds atop what it cannot bury. It adapts not to life, but to loss. This transformation manifests in its people. Walk through the deeper levels, and you see it. Faces that seem half-remembered. Languages built from machine fragments and human pain. Entire communities that no longer understand their own rituals, but keep them anyway. Because to stop is to lose the last thread. One gang lights sacred fires every dusk, not knowing the rite began as a ventilation test for a long-dead facility. Another refuses to wear red in certain domes, not knowing why, only that those who do tend to disappear. These are not superstitions. They are survival algorithms, cultural echoes, trauma rituals calcified into religion. The Imperium calls this heresy, misuse of sanctioned faith. But the Hive knows better. It knows that nothing sanctioned survives here. Only that which mutates. The God Emperor, worshipped in frescoes of gold above, becomes something else below. Down here, he is the Fire Father, the rust-eyed judge, the machine dreamer, and each incarnation is shaped by need. He is not adored, he is bargained with, appeased, placated. His silence is not interpreted as holiness, but as abandonment, and yet people continue to live. Not just survive, live. They find joy in scraps, meaning in echoes. They gather in junk domes to share food synthesized from algae and old coolant. They paint murals in rust. They tattoo their faces with maps of sectors no longer navigable. Every moment is both rebellion and requiem. Every breath is a kind of defiance. Because in a place built to erase you, existing is resistance. There's a market in Sector Thine 4 where no one speaks. Not because they can't, but because silence is the rule. Every trade, every threat, every deal is communicated through hand signs and eye movements. The origin of the tradition is lost, but it remains. It works. And that's the Hive's deepest lesson. Meaning does not need origin, it needs utility. In the Underhive, utility is king and everything else is optional, even memory. But memory has a way of clawing back. Sometimes entire sections are uncovered by accident, sealed domes opened by tremors or salvage operations. What emerges is never expected. A pre-imperial library, its data cores still intact. A cryo chamber with corpses frozen mid-prayer. A picked slate showing skies blue and endless. These discoveries spark awe, chaos, terror. Gangs fight over the meaning as much as the artifacts. Priests declare miracles. Cults fracture. One Hive level even suicided en masse after seeing a sky for the first time. They believed they had died and gone to a false paradise. Their corpses were found arranged in concentric circles, eyes burned out from staring too long at the image. This is what the Hive does to truth. It makes it radioactive, toxic, unprocessable. The deeper you go, the less you can afford to know. The mind must adapt or break, and so people unlearn. They forget the stars, the surface, the years. They become one with the metal, the rust, the dark. They don't remember what they were before. They don't need to. The Hive remembers for them, and it does not forgive. But sometimes amid the forgetting, something survives. A lullaby sung in 5 different dialects. A game played with servo bones. A name carved into every doorway of a sector by 100 generations of a family no one remembers. These are not just fragments. They are fossils of resistance. Proof that even a world designed to forget cannot erase everything. The Underhive is not just where the Imperium hides its waste. It is where it hides its truth. It is not the shadow of the Empire. It is its foundation, its consequence, its mirror. It reflects the cost of every throne, every cathedral, every war. And in its reflections, it asks a single, unanswerable question. What if none of it was worth the price? Necromunda was never meant to be beautiful. It was never designed for dreams. And yet, it became something more monstrous and magnificent than any Imperial architect could have imagined. The Underhive is not an accident. It is the logical consequence of millennia spent ignoring the cost of survival. Entire cities live without sky or surface because the Imperium decided that industry was more important than humanity. That production mattered more than presence. That function outweighed life. And so, layer by layer, the dream of a unified empire collapsed into itself, becoming a tomb stacked atop another tomb until it forgot the sun existed. To most surface dwellers, the Underhive is a blight, something to be ignored, cleansed, or contained. But what they miss is that it's also a revelation. It reveals what happens when you build without pause, when you feed without care, when you strip mine identity and history and call it order. The people in the Underhive do not live, they persist. They are not citizens, they are residue. Yet even in that residue, something stirs, something human, something angry. Because the truth, the unbearable truth, is that these people were never supposed to exist. The Imperium doesn't plan for the Underhive. It doesn't want it. It doesn't recognize it. These are the forgotten, the rejected, the condemned. They are not rebels by choice, but by abandonment. And that's what makes their endurance so powerful. They've built worlds in the hollowed lungs of dead machines. They've created art from rust, families from radiation, faith from silence. In the deepest dark, where nothing is meant to grow, they've grown anyway. And what do we call that, if not resistance? It's easy to glorify the Space Marines, the Inquisitors, the Saints. They have legends written for them, murals painted in cathedrals. But the people of the Under-Hive have no songs, only scars, only warnings, only stories etched into walls with nails and blood. They won't be remembered in the archives, but their suffering built the hives. Their bones filled the foundations. They are the cost of every lasgun, every shell, every throne room gilded in gold. There's a cruelty in that, but also a terrible kind of beauty. These people are not just survivors. They are the proof that the Imperium still has a soul, even if that soul is broken and bleeding. Every scavenger who finds a relic and sells it to feed her family. Every ganger who protects his turf not for glory, but because it's the only thing he has. Every mutant who still believes in something despite knowing what the galaxy thinks of him. They are what's left of hope. Twisted, rusted, savage, but real. So the next time someone speaks of Necromunda as a hive world of filth and violence, remember what lies beneath. Remember that those towers of steel are held aloft by corpses, that the glow of the spire is fed by darkness unimaginable, and that in that darkness people still fight, still dream, still burn. Not because they think it will change anything, but because if they don't, then all of it, all the pain, the silence, the endless decay, truly means nothing. In the Under-Hive, meaning is carved from ruin. Life is forged in suffering, and sometimes, just sometimes, a person who has never seen the sky will still look up, still wonder, still dream. And that is why the Under-Hive endures. If you felt the depth of that descent into darkness, if the truths buried in these vaults spoke to something in you, subscribe. There's more beneath the surface, there always is.